Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Mazel Tov again to Chloe and to Theo on becoming B'nai Mitzvah this morning. We are so glad that you were able to be called to Torah on this historic bima. Our community celebrates with you and celebrates your commitments to Torah and to Jewish life. To the Holy Blossom community, this Shabbat I want to share something with you, and I'm not entirely sure how you're going to take it. I want to be honest, I want to be vulnerable with my community, and the truth is this: I am exhausted. Spiritually, physically, emotionally. The challenges of the day are so heavy, so many, so varied. It is nearly impossible to know when to fight and when to just collapse. I wish I had the strength to stand here with a smile and a hopeful message, but I do not. And you deserve hope, and you deserve joy, and you deserve truth. And the truth is this: our world is broken. Its people violent, its environment deteriorating, its economy struggling, its health is in question. And so in these dark moments of history, we turn Godward, as we always have, to pray once again to fill up our coffers. In the wake of the violence that is playing out across the world in Afghanistan, I found some solace this week in the words and the prayers of Israeli poet and liturgist Alden Solvi, who writes, "Let tranquility reign." I want to share his prayer with you. Some days, Ancient One, some days the prayers of your people are so close we can hold them in our hands, feel them with our eyes, taste them with our breath. They surround our hearts to become our yearning. They surround our song to become our grieving. They surround our souls to become our pleading. My soul has dwelled too long among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak of it, they are for war. When will peace come, source of peace? When will sorrow be vanquished? When will tranquility reign? Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul. Adonai will guard your going and your coming now and evermore. For you are our hope, our comfort, our blessing. Let those who cherish life bless this day and every day. For the sake of my comrades and companions, I shall say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of Adonai our God, I will seek your good. Let these prayers ascend to the lofty heights so that nations and the peoples of the earth will rejoice in holiness, will rejoice in splendor, and will rejoice together in righteousness. Amen. Our society has been battered, demoralized, punch after punch after punch, uncovering painful truths about our history, facing global climate change in horrifying ways, armed conflicts of massive consequence, a global rise in anti-Semitism, an unrelenting virus, and these are just a few of our existential crises. And now our hearts break again for the ongoing situation in Afghanistan. With the Canadian-wide Slichot service tonight, we intensify our reflections, our efforts to ask forgiveness ahead of the days of awe. In our service tonight, our liturgy reminds us not to neglect the importance of the present. And this is a difficult task, as the high holidays tend not to be focused on the present, but rather in the memories of past, the dreams and hopes for the future. But still, despite the many directions our liturgy pulls us in this evening, the many existential questions that we must ask ourselves, the complex task of weaving it all together, to something tangible and meaningful, the place to start is in the present. And the present is a brutal and unforgiving place. In Sha'arei Slicha, the Reform Movement's prayer book for Slichot services, we find the following meditation on the power of being present. We read that there are many fine things you mean to do someday under what you think will be more favorable circumstances, but the only time that is surely yours is the present. Hence, this is the time to speak the word of appreciation and of sympathy, to do the generous deed, to forgive the fault of a thoughtless friend, to sacrifice self a little more for others. Today is the day to express our noblest qualities of heart and mind, to do at least one worthy thing which you have long postponed, and to use your God-given abilities for the enrichment of some less fortunate traveler. Today, you can make your life significant and worthwhile, for the present is yours to do with as you will. And right at this moment, the present is an exceptionally challenging place to be. The United States' decision to withdraw from Afghanistan has quickly become an absolute disaster. And I can say that I'm an American. What began 20 years ago as a war on terror has culminated in images of refugees clinging to military planes as they are taxiing and taking off on runways, babies lifted over barbed wire fences, attacks on the military, and of course, as always, subsequent partisan bickering over whose fault it is. I generally like to shy away from telling personal stories from the Bima, but I believe a little context may be helpful to understand why this is so incredibly painful. I was in grade 4 when the Twin Towers were attacked 20 years ago on September 11th, 2001. Now, there is no hiding from the fact that I am a young rabbi and that for the majority of my life, the U.S. military has been engaged in Afghanistan. And when I was preparing for my bar mitzvah, the war was still relatively new, and I wanted to create a mitzvah project that would benefit the troops in some way. So I sent a letter to my cousin, Paul Larson. At the time, Paul was the commanding captain of the 2nd Battalion Airborne of the 503rd Infantry. He was a paratrooper. And because of this, he was one of the very first boots on the ground. I sent him a letter. I asked him, what do your troops need right now? How can we help from the home front? And Paul's answer has always stayed with me. He wrote, morale is low. The Army is taking good care of us, but morale is low. There's a lot of waiting, a lot of missing home. We could honestly just use a good time. And so my mitzvah project was born, responding to the moment, responding to the present. I created comedy care packages, complete with candy bars and protein bars, comic books and joke books, and I'm told the soldiers' favorites were the whoopee cushions. And a month or two later, I received a thank you note from my cousin Paul and his company, and it was accompanied with a certificate and this flag, which I want to share with you. And if anyone has been in my office, you'll see that this flag is there next to my proud Canadian flags as well. The certificate reads that the Able Company 2nd Battalion of the 503rd Infantry sends this American flag flown in honor of Zachary Goodman. The flag was flown over Forward Operating Base Sweeney in Zabul Province of Afghanistan. The Forward Operating Base Sweeney served as the home to the 178 American paratroopers of Able Company fighting the war on terror in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. I was in grade 4 when the world changed forever. And this flag, for me, represents a child overwhelmed by the world, who felt the need to do something. I could not volunteer for the army, though I wanted to. I could not sit down at a strategic foreign policy table. There was seemingly nothing that I could do. But that was just not an option. And so, responding to the present, taking a small action, showed to make a large impact. My cousin Paul, now Lieutenant Colonel and Director of the Joint Staff at the Pentagon, still talks about those whoopee cushions that his soldiers got through many tough nights. And now, as I watch the news unfold, it makes me sick to my stomach to see this region fall into the hands of those that so many sacrificed so greatly in order to protect from. Margaret Sullivan, a columnist for the Washington Post, wrote on August 16th that, as always, the media moves too quickly to the blame game, allowing the most extreme punditry to carry the day. When history is in the making, as it surely is here, that's far from the best approach. And the title of her article, which I find to be moving for this purpose, was entitled, "The Afghan Debacle Lasted 2 Decades, and the Media Spent 2 Hours Deciding Who to Blame." And then things went from unbearably bad to worse, as huge crowds gathered over the past 2 weeks at the airport with hopes of being evacuated from this country. Twin blasts delivered destruction and significant loss of life at the major airport in Kabul, and the Barron Hotel where the U.S. and British forces have been stationed to help process the thousands of Afghans and others fleeing the country. The attacks were believed to have been carried out by an Islamic State affiliate known as ISIS-K. And the victims of these attacks include at least 13 U.S. military forces, over 95 Afghan nationals, many innocent women, men, and children. Another 18 service members have been injured, with more than 140 Afghans seeking medical attention. And so I'm exhausted, and I'm at a loss for words. Many of us feel angry, sad, horrified, overwhelmed, yes, to see this developing situation continue to deteriorate. And before we tear ourselves to shreds arguing about who has the blame, remember that Judaism teaches us to understand our collective responsibility when tragedy occurs. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel writes that in a free society, some are responsible and all are guilty. And we owe it to ourselves and to each other to have the patience to put away the blame and feel the pain of this moment. Now is not the time for finger pointing. This is not an opportunity to discuss what administration should and shouldn't do, what administration is at fault. But we are hurting, and we must feel that hurt. We must be honest with ourselves as we prepare for the holidays. Compassion fatigue is real. I never want to grow numb to the suffering of our fellow human beings. Perhaps then it is best to conclude not with the Parsha, which speaks of horrific curses, but with the Haftorah. The prophet Isaiah focuses on images of light to remind the people that though they may be experiencing a dark time, God's countenance and light will eventually return. The hauntingly resonant verse of Isaiah 60:18. This could have been written yesterday and it would ring true. It reads, Lo yishma od Hamas ba'artzecha. No more shall violence be heard in your land. Sho chever bigvulaich. Desolation and destruction within your borders. V'karata Yeshua chomataich usharaich tehila. But you shall name your walls deliverance and your gates renown. My friends, it is okay to feel burnt out. It is okay to feel lost, a little numb, exhausted by the challenges of our day. Even as we wish things were different, may we focus on what has improved. Even as we struggle with the world as it is now, may we see the myriad of blessings that are still present in our lives. Even as we remember the hardship of the past year, and perhaps the year to come, may we recognize that we have come through it, weathered perhaps, but stronger, and still encouraged to move forward toward joy, toward peace, toward shalom. Shabbat shalom.